Survival games have become one of the most popular themes in modern popular culture. Whether it's horror films like Saw, or social dramas such as Squid Game, audiences are fascinated by the increasingly elaborate challenges devised by writers, where human life is always at stake. But what if this deadly game wasn't entertainment at all? What if its participants never chose to take part and had done nothing to deserve their fate? What if the rules weren't written by a deranged mastermind, but imposed by a ruthless political regime? And what if that game was football? That is exactly the story told by Third Half, released in 1962. The Soviet sports war drama is based on the legend of the Death Match of 1942, in which former players of Dynamo Kiev faced a German team in Nazi-occupied Kiev. According to the Soviet version of the events, the victory was followed by imprisonment, forced labor, and eventually execution. In this video essay, we'll explore how a film about the courage of athletes became both a product of Soviet propaganda and a forgotten piece of cinema history. You are watching Art, and let's begin. It would be inaccurate to call Third Half the very first football film. However, it was among the first serious dramas to demonstrate that football could be far more than entertainment as a basis for a comedy. It could serve as the foundation for a genuine human tragedy. Throughout the first half of the 20th century, boxing dominated sports cinema. Its spectacle, physical confrontation, and inherent violence made it an ideal subject for everything from comedies to crime dramas. Football also appeared in Soviet cinema, but mostly in light-hearted and optimistic stories. One of the best-known examples is The Goalkeeper, where football serves primarily as a backdrop for a comedic narrative. Third Half became one of the first Soviet films to transform a football match into a full-fledged war drama. Here, football ceases to be just a game. Instead, it becomes a symbol of human dignity, resistance, and the willingness to stand by one's convictions, even when victory may cost a person their life. Third Half was produced during the Khrushchev thaw, a period when Soviet filmmakers were granted considerably greater artistic freedom than in previous years. That creative shift is evident throughout the film. During the football sequences, cinematographer Sergei Zaitsev aims to do more than simply capture the action on the field. He wants the audience to experience the intensity of a real match. The camera follows the ball with remarkable energy. Close-ups immerse us in the player's emotions, while the constant alternation between German and Soviet spectators emphasizes that the conflict extends far beyond the pitch itself. One of the film's most striking moments comes when a young Soviet player suffers a serious injury. As he collapses, the camera loses its stability and the stadium appears to turn upside down, allowing the audience to experience his pain, confusion, and disorientation almost firsthand. The film also makes excellent use of black and white cinematography. At first, one of the young characters simply appears to have light-colored hair. Only later does the viewer realize that it has turned completely white, a subtle visual detail made even more powerful by the absence of color. Yet the film's greatest strength lies in its visual storytelling. Time and again, the director chooses to communicate through images and sound rather than dialogue. After the footballers are transferred from the concentration camp to a house, they sleep in real beds for the first time in a long while. Instead of showing their dreams, the film lets us hear them, creating the unsettling feeling that we're listening to memories never meant for anyone else's ears. Another remarkable sequence takes place inside the ruins of a registry office. A few days before the match, one of the players visits the building with the woman he loves. They stand silently before the registration desk while, in the background, the voices of former clerks can be heard pronouncing young couples husband and wife.
Счастье и надеяться, что чувство, которое привело вас к нам, вы сохраните на всю свою совместную жизнь.
Прошу подойти к столу и скрепить ваш союз подписью. Желаю вам большого счастья в жизни.
Поздравляем вас.
Without relying on a single flashback, the film reminds us of the ordinary lives its characters once had, and everything the war took away from them. Thanks to these artistic choices, Third Half proves to be a far more inventive film than one might expect from a Soviet sports drama of the early 60s. Football is merely its starting point. At its core, the film is about memory, loss, and the resilience of human dignity. Third Half was released in 1962 to mark the 20th anniversary of the events that became known in the Soviet Union as the Death March. Yet even a brief look at the historical record makes it clear that the film was never intended to be a faithful reconstruction of what actually happened. In reality, the Kiev team was called Start. it consists not only of former Dynamo Kiev players, but also footballers from other clubs, including Lokomotiv and Spartak. The team was formed during the German occupation, while its players were working at a local bakery. For them, returning to the football field was a way to reclaim, if only for a few moments, the life they had lost to the war. Over the following months, Start played a number of matches against German and collaborationist teams, winning many of them. Later, several players were arrested and some ultimately lost their lives. However, historians continue to debate whether there was a direct connection between those victories and the subsequent repression. Many aspects of the story remain uncertain to this day. That is why third half is better understood not as a historical reconstruction, but as a cinematic myth. Not a deliberate falsehood, but a legend inspired by real events. The filmmakers changed the characters' names, simplified the chronology, and focused less on historical accuracy than on dramatic storytelling. Within the film, the Soviet footballers are presented with a stark moral choice: lose the match and survive, or win, knowing that victory could lead to imprisonment and death. One character is willing to compromise for the sake of survival, while the others believe that defeat would amount to betraying their homeland. By reducing the conflict to such a clear moral dilemma, the film transforms a sporting event into a story about courage, sacrifice, and personal conviction. At the same time, third half cannot be dismissed as simplistic propaganda. Its German characters are not portrayed as one-dimensional villains. The captain of the German team recognizes a Soviet player he had competed against before the war and comes to realize that politics has corrupted the very essence of sport as a fair contest.
Sport ist keine Politik.
Meanwhile, the German command fears that losing to Soviet footballers would damage military morale while thousands of German soldiers continue to die on the front lines. In this way, the conflict extends far beyond the football pitch itself. This is precisely why third half has gradually faded into obscurity. As archives were opened and new historical research emerged, the story of the death match proved to be far more complex than the Soviet narrative had suggested. For many viewers, the film came to symbolize Soviet propaganda, overshadowing its artistic achievements. Yet the true value of third half has never been its historical accuracy. It's not a documentary record of the past, but an attempt to transform history into legend through the language of cinema, a meditation on courage, patriotism, and the price of human choice. And it is for that reason, as a work of art, rather than a historical document, the third half deserves to be remembered today.